In this episode, I get to sit down with John Whitehall. John is a consultant with Sandler Training. Since the beginning of March, John has been struggling with changing his business strategy around, which includes going completely virtual in training his clients. John talks about some of his challenges that he is facing right now in changing his business strategy, as well as gives advice on how to handle sales during a time like this without exploiting a bad situation that people are going through. Just check it out and give it a listen. Well, then let's open up with this a little bit. So obviously you're running into all these technology issues now that we've switched over to doing work from home. How is that working out for you, John? Changing your whole structure and how you're selling and how you're doing things.
You know, I just got off a call with I think there were 35 other Sandler trainers, and we were really trying to just explore that, share best practices, and everybody's doing something similar to what I'm doing. In many cases, everybody's had some sort of loss as far as their client base goes, or they put off training, so there's that. So we're all trying to figure out, okay, how do we get some kind of traction? Right now, everything is virtual. I'm now looking at my world as completely virtual, regardless of whether folks contracted me as in person or not. Anything I sell right now, if they give me all clear next month, I'm still going to be continuing on the virtual path. So
wow.
Trying to understand what it would look like going forward with two tiers of business, right? Where one would be in person and the other is virtual. And I'm thinking maybe all of my public training becomes virtual going forward, and the only time they get me in person are the people who, I go in and work with a full-blown company. So yeah, it's shifty right now.
That's totally applicable to what we're talking about today when it concerns like things like sales and how you're running your business. Obviously, we're in a time right now where everybody's changing their strategy. Everybody's changing what they have to do because they're working from home or they're doing all these crazy things. What I want to focus on is like with sales. A lot of people right now are probably going to be struggling with, okay, how do we handle this time? How do we change our focus? How do we actually still sell during a time where people might not be buying? What are some things that you're facing that could be challenges, but things that you're also facing that you're like, hey, this is an obstacle that if we get over it, it's going to be a huge benefit to us in the sales world?
That's a great question, Joe. So one of the things that I'm telling my clients is, and we teach cookbooking, and a cookbook is in selling is what are the daily activity, weekly activities, monthly activities that you need to be doing consistently to grow your business and hit your goals. Now, what we realized is that the cookbook that we built back in January and February no longer applies during this time that we're in right now. So we almost need a coronavirus cookbook. And then the other thing I think we have to think about is when we come out of this, let's say it's in June, let's say it's in July, I guarantee you that where we're heading is not going to be in that close resemblance to where we've been. Okay, this is a life-changing, both personally and professionally for most people. I think that businesses who struggled with remote employees, people working from home, are now forced to do it, and I think there's going to be many more companies who are embracing it on the other side. I also think there's a lot of people out there who are looking for new opportunities, let's say. They're spending an awful lot of time home on the couch, and you can only watch so much Netflix, right? So people are starting to look at ways that they can better themselves. But the number one thing that I'm running into is many people are really stuck right now. They're still in shock mode of this change, and because they maybe are not selling as actively as they once did, or perhaps they don't feel like it's appropriate to sell at all. And I really have a hard time getting my head around that, because there are businesses that are growing and thriving during this. And it's not that they're taking advantage of an unfortunate event that's happening globally. It's just their businesses. People are gravitating towards their business. And I'll give you a couple of examples. So if you haven't been to a Lowe's or a Home Depot recently, you need to go at least just ride by a parking lot, because they are full. They are blowing and going. And I think this is going to be a year where businesses who support the homeowner, people who do renovations, people who do roofs, siding, put pools in, do renovations, additions, landscaping, and the like. I think all of these businesses are going to thrive on the other side of this because, let's face it, I don't know about you, I'm not anxious to get on a cruise ship anytime soon.
Right.
I think people are going to be skittish about getting on airplanes anytime soon. I think that close contact, the social distancing that we're doing right now, even when things normalize, there's going to be a change in how we interact with each other in public. So I think that there's a great opportunity for these home, I don't want to call them home improvement, but let's say businesses that support homeowners, I think are really going to thrive this year because I think we're looking at probably the year of the staycation. People are going to be staying at home. There are two types of companies that I'm seeing. I'm seeing those who are proactive and they're really trying to keep things going, stay engaged and so forth. And there are many who are sitting on the sidelines just waiting. And they're both valid strategies, except the people sitting on the sidelines are going to be, I think, very surprised that when this comes back, whatever that looks like again, they're going to find themselves in a very crowded space. And I think it could be very difficult for them to attract clients or even become noticed during that time. I think we're in for some interesting challenges as we roll through this.
How do you capitalize on a situation without exploiting it? Like, this is one sensitive situation where it's like, hey, we could easily sell and satisfy. I know with Sandler, you guys talk about your pain points and things like that. But how do you satisfy this whole advertising thing without exploiting the things people are going through and exploiting the whole situation that we're dealing with? Because I think that's what a lot of people are struggling with right now.
Yeah. My favorite Sandler rule is this one. All things being equal, people buy from who they trust. All things being unequal, they still buy from who they trust. So if we can build trust by having these nurturing sounding phone calls where we're asking people about how they're feeling during these difficult times, I think that's a win if you can get somebody to really open up and talk to you.
Sure. And I really think trust during this time is extremely important. Knowing who to trust and what to trust in a time when you're extremely vulnerable, that's a huge deal. So how does somebody who's doing sales, how do they come off showing more that they're more trustworthy than a typical person?
I think the main thing is make the conversation about them, right? And if they truly care and if they're engaged, they're going to ask you about your business and how you're doing. But one of the rules that another Sandler rule is the 70-30 rule, and that when you're having an interaction with a client, you want the client to be doing 70% of the talking. So how do we do that? We do that by having questions, right? And the right kind of questioning strategy. So you can think about the questions I mentioned earlier, right? How you doing? What's happening in your industry? What's happening with your company? What are you seeing in the marketplace? How's this impacted what you're doing right now? Because it certainly is a bit different than it was in January. And these are really great open-ended questions to get people going. And then the way to keep it going is, tell me more. Keep them talking.
Thanks for watching Social Through Distance. Hopefully you have found this beneficial to your life. There'll be links for our guests in the description, as well as a link where you can watch or listen to this episode's interview in its entirety. Thanks again for joining us, and we'll see you again next time.